When it comes to learning English or any skill, mindset is the foundation. For years, I told myself, I don't need English, I just need to be good at my job. I believed my technical skills were enough, but when I failed my first interview at a big tech company in the US, I realized the hard truth. Without English, I was invisible. That moment was painful, humiliating, and eye-opening. It wasn't just a setback, it was a wake-up call. And this wake-up call taught me that no matter how smart or talented you are, the right mindset can make or break your success. Most people fail at learning English not because they lack ability, but because they believe they can't. They see fluency as a distant dream, something reserved for people with natural talent or years of study. I was no different. I felt frustrated every time I tried to speak and couldn't express even simple ideas without hesitation. The words got stuck in my head, my accent felt heavy, and I started doubting myself. This self-doubt is a trap. If you believe you are incapable, your brain subconsciously avoids effort, and progress slows down dramatically. The first step in changing your mindset is to accept that mistakes are part of the process. For so long, I feared sounding foolish. I feared being judged by native speakers or even friends. But I realized that perfection is an illusion. No one expects you to speak perfectly when you're learning. Native speakers don't laugh at effort, they appreciate it. Once I embraced this, everything changed. I started speaking English to myself in the shower, while cooking, and even during walks. I wasn't worried about mistakes anymore. I was focused on progress. Another important part of mindset is self-talk. The words you tell yourself shape your confidence. I replaced "I am bad at English" with "I am improving every day." I celebrated small wins, saying a sentence without hesitation, understanding a podcast, or writing a paragraph in English. These small victories reinforced my belief that fluency was achievable. Your brain is highly responsive to encouragement. Positive self-talk is like fuel for learning. Mindset also means persistence. I committed to speaking English for at least 2 hours every day, no excuses. Some days I felt lazy, tired, or frustrated, but I reminded myself that consistency matters more than perfect effort. Even if progress feels slow, persistence compounds. 5 months later, the results were undeniable. I had transformed from a hesitant, insecure speaker into someone confident and fluent. In conclusion, mindset is the invisible key that unlocks learning. It is not enough to study grammar or memorize words. Without believing in yourself, progress will be slow or non-existent. Change your mindset, embrace mistakes, celebrate progress, speak boldly, and commit to consistent practice. Your brain will adapt, your confidence will grow, and English will no longer be a barrier. It will become a tool that opens doors to your dreams.
One of the biggest mistakes beginners make when learning English is waiting to feel ready before speaking. I made this mistake too. I thought I needed to know hundreds of words, perfect grammar, and flawless pronunciation before I could even try to hold a conversation. But the moment I realized the truth, everything changed. You learn English by speaking it, not by memorizing it silently. Waiting for perfection is a trap. It slows progress and increases frustration. The first step I took was to start speaking to myself in English, even when I knew it would sound awkward. I described what I was doing throughout the day. I am making breakfast. The eggs are hot. I like eggs. At first, my sentences were short, stilted, and often grammatically wrong, but the act of speaking activated my brain in a completely different way than reading or listening alone ever could. My tongue learned to form the sounds of English, and my brain began connecting words into sentences automatically. I also discovered the power of survival sentences. Instead of memorizing long lists of words or grammar rules, I wrote 50 simple, essential sentences that I would need every day. Sentences like, "Can you repeat that?" or "I don't understand" became my daily drills. Each morning, I repeated these sentences out loud 10 times. At first, my tongue felt slow, clumsy, and unnatural, but persistence made them automatic. Within a week, I could say them without thinking. and that small sense of fluency gave me the confidence to try more complex sentences. Another technique that accelerated my speaking ability was imitating native speakers. I picked short clips from movies or YouTube, paused after each sentence, and repeated it exactly, matching the tone, emotion, and speed. This is different from just repeating words. It trains your muscles to move like a native speaker and tunes your ear to the rhythm of natural English. I learned to notice pauses, intonation, and stress patterns that textbooks never teach. Importantly, I also made a rule for myself. Speak English for at least 2 hours every day, no exceptions. If I was alone, I talked to myself. If I was cooking, I narrated my actions in English. Even walking down the street became a practice session, describing my surroundings, imagining conversations, and answering questions I asked myself. This daily speaking habit was uncomfortable at first. I felt silly, I made mistakes, and I worried about sounding strange. But every mistake became a lesson, and over time, my confidence grew. Speaking from day one also changed how I thought about learning. Instead of focusing solely on grammar or vocabulary, I focused on communication and fluency. My goal was not to speak perfectly, but to speak naturally. I realized that even with a limited vocabulary, if I could string words together and express ideas, I could communicate effectively.
One of the most critical shifts I made in my English learning journey was learning to think in English instead of translating from my native language. When I first started, every sentence I wanted to speak had to pass through a translation filter in my head. I would think, how do I say this in English? Or what's the English word for that? This constant translation slowed me down, made speaking stressful, and often caused me to forget words mid-sentence. I realized that if I wanted to speak fluently, I had to train my brain to bypass translation completely. The first technique I used was describing everything around me in English. I turned everyday activities into mini speaking exercises. For example, while walking outside, I would think, the sky is blue, the sun is shining, people are walking, that man is wearing a red shirt. While cooking breakfast, I narrated, I am boiling water, I am making eggs, the eggs smell delicious. At first, it felt strange and a little silly, but this practice helped me start forming English sentences automatically in my mind. The more I did it, the more natural it became. My brain began to associate English words with actions and objects directly, without needing to translate from Portuguese. Another powerful method was answering questions in English daily. I asked myself simple questions. What did I do today? Or what will I eat for dinner? At first, my answers were very short. I worked, I ate, I slept. But I deliberately forced myself to expand. I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break and had a coffee. After that, I read an article in English. This method trained my brain to construct longer, more detailed sentences in English without stopping to translate. Gradually, I noticed my thinking speed improved and forming sentences became faster and more natural. Writing a daily English journal further reinforced thinking in English. Every night, I wrote about my day, what I did, what I saw, and how I felt. Initially, the sentences were simple. Today I went to the store. I bought apples. The apples were fresh. Over time, I began incorporating complex ideas, idiomatic expressions, and new vocabulary I had learned. Writing in English helped me internalize grammar, sentence structures, and word usage, all while training my mind to operate directly in English. I also trained my brain by internal dialogue practice. Whenever I was alone, I would have imaginary conversations with myself or with a virtual friend in English. I asked questions, responded, expressed opinions, and even debated with myself.
This simulated real-life conversations, helping me think quickly in English and prepare for spontaneous speaking situations. The biggest breakthrough came when I realized that translation is the enemy of fluency. Every time I tried to translate a thought, I lost speed, clarity, and confidence. By thinking in English, I allowed words and ideas to flow naturally. My sentences became smoother, my speaking faster, and my confidence soared. Thinking in English also made listening easier. I could understand native speakers without pausing to translate in my mind. By training my brain to think in English through narration, question answering, journaling, and internal dialogues, I developed a mental environment where English was the default language. This single shift accelerated my fluency far more than memorizing vocabulary or studying grammar alone.
When I first started learning English seriously, I made the same mistake that most beginners do. I tried to memorize long lists of vocabulary and cram grammar rules from textbooks. I spent hours repeating words like happy, sad, beautiful, big, without context, thinking that memorizing hundreds of words would make me fluent. But after weeks of effort, I realized it didn't work. I could recall the words in isolation, but when it came to speaking or forming sentences, they vanished from my mind. That's when I understood a critical lesson. Learning smart is more effective than learning hard. The first step in learning smart was focusing on words in context instead of isolated vocabulary. Instead of memorizing the word excited, I learned phrases and sentences that used it naturally, like, I am so excited for the party, or she felt excited when she got the invitation. By embedding new words in short, meaningful stories or sentences, I could remember them easily and use them naturally in conversation. This method also helped me understand the subtle differences between similar words, their collocations, and how they're used in real life. Another smart strategy was learning through stories. Every day, I picked 5 new words and created a short story that included all of them. Then I read the story out loud multiple times and tried to use those words in my own sentences throughout the day. For example, words like excited, invitation, party, arrive, surprise became part of a mini story. I was very excited because I received an invitation to a big party. When I arrived, I got a huge surprise. This approach made vocabulary learning enjoyable and far more effective than rote memorization. I also realized that grammar should be learned naturally, not forcefully. Traditional grammar exercises can be tedious and disconnected from real-life usage. Instead, I focused on noticing patterns in sentences used by native speakers. I listened carefully to podcasts, watched movies, and read articles, paying attention to how tenses, prepositions, and sentence structures were actually used. When I made mistakes, I corrected myself in context rather than memorizing endless grammar rules. Over time, I internalized the structures and began using them automatically. Another smart approach was imitating native speakers through shadowing. Instead of endlessly studying pronunciation rules from a book, I listened to short clips from movies, podcasts, or YouTube, paused after each sentence, and repeated it exactly as I heard it, matching speed, intonation, and emotion. This not only improved my pronunciation, but also taught me rhythm, stress, and natural sentence flow. I discovered that mimicry is a powerful shortcut to sounding fluent without spending months on drills. I combined these methods with active practice. Learning smart isn't just about consuming material, it's about using it. Every new word, sentence structure, or pronunciation tip was applied immediately in conversations, self-talk, journaling, or storytelling. By doing this, I ensured that knowledge became usable, not just theoretical.
One of the most powerful lessons I learned in my journey to fluency is that consistency and real practice matter more than anything else. Many people believe that short, intense bursts of studying or expensive courses will automatically lead to fluency, but the truth is different. English, like any skill, is built through daily habits and repeated use, not sporadic effort. When I committed to practicing every single day, even for a short amount of time, I started seeing results faster than I ever imagined. Consistency means creating a routine that keeps English at the center of your life. For me, this meant dedicating at least 2 hours every day to active speaking, listening, writing, or reading. Some days I spoke to myself while cooking. Other days I practiced shadowing a podcast or a movie clip. Even when I felt tired, unmotivated, or frustrated, I reminded myself that small, consistent effort compounds over time. One day of practice may feel insignificant, but months of daily engagement create dramatic improvement. Equally important is real practice, using English in meaningful, interactive ways. Learning through repetition alone, like memorizing vocabulary lists or reading grammar books, is not enough. I needed to actively produce language and test myself in real situations. That meant having conversations, narrating my day, joining online language groups, or practicing with friends. The moment I shifted from passive learning to active participation, my brain began to connect words, structures, and ideas automatically. Speaking, listening, writing, and thinking in English became an integrated process rather than isolated exercises. One method that accelerated my fluency was immersive repetition with real content. I used movies, YouTube videos, and podcasts not just to listen, but to speak alongside them. I paused after each sentence and repeated it exactly, copying the tone, speed, and emotion of the speaker. This made speaking more natural and helped me internalize sentence structures, pronunciation, and rhythm simultaneously. By combining listening and speaking in context, I was learning faster than any traditional classroom could provide. Consistency also meant building a feedback loop. Every day, I evaluated my progress. What sentences were difficult to say? Which words did I forget? Where did my grammar fail? I immediately addressed these issues, repeating the sentences, adjusting pronunciation, or rewriting sentences in my journal. This daily reflection ensured that mistakes became opportunities for improvement rather than obstacles. Another key element of real practice was engaging with native or fluent speakers. Initially, I was nervous, fearing mistakes or judgment, but joining online groups and practicing conversations taught me an invaluable lesson. Communication is more important than perfection. Even imperfect sentences convey ideas, and the more you speak, the more confident and fluent you become. Real conversations accelerated my progress far beyond solitary study. Finally, I realized that fluency isn't just a skill, it's a habit. Consistency plus real practice transforms English from a subject you study into a language you live. By making it a daily part of your life, you train your brain, improve your confidence, and gradually eliminate hesitation. After months of sustained effort, I went from struggling to form basic sentences to speaking fluently, naturally, and confidently. In conclusion, consistency and real practice are the ultimate keys to fluency. It doesn't matter how much grammar you know or how many words you've memorized. Without daily practice and active use, English remains theoretical. Commit to regular engagement. Push yourself to use English in real situations, embrace mistakes, and stay persistent. Over time, these habits compound and fluency becomes inevitable.